And Webster is the member for Mallee. Great to have you with us again on Flow, Anne.
Thank you so much, Ricky. Great to be with you.
And I noticed on your social media recently you got a message of support from the Agriculture Minister, David Littleproud, who says Victoria is more than just Melbourne. That seems to be the emphasis with this Commonwealth Games hosting arrangement that's just been a success for Victoria, but not much in it for the electorate of Mallee.
Look, are we surprised? I don't think so. I mean, the Premier has proven that unless it's COVID restrictions, he actually doesn't know that Mildura exists or Mallee exists for that matter. It's another disappointment that, even though we have an independent representing it, that voice is actually not heard, and the power is with the Labor government, which is Melbourne, Bendigo, Ballarat, Geelong centric, that little halo.
Yeah, and I noticed that Gippsland's also mentioned in that list as well. That would be the one coalition federal seat. We look at everything through a federal prism in election campaigns, but all the rest are Labor seats.
Yeah, look, Gippsland's that bit closer to Melbourne, of course. It's still, he's got a fear of kilometres. He doesn't quite understand that even Mildura, with our incredible sporting precinct now, that it's 45 minutes from Melbourne by plane. Anyway, he's making his decisions, and what we need to do is highlight the amazing benefits of the Mallee more broadly and Sunraysia for Commonwealth Games. I believe he's talking about potentially having pre-competition rounds, perhaps.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the independent for Mildura, Ali Cupper. She said on her social media that she contacted Martin Pakula when she realised Mildura wasn't getting anything and claimed there was something coming. So maybe that's the consolation prize, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, well, that's right, consolation prize. But look, are we surprised? We saw Albo this week come out and talk about unemployment rates that are incorrect and completely out of the ballpark of what's reality, and not only misquoting the unemployment rate, which is 4%, not 5.4%, therefore not understanding the entire economic recovery from the pandemic that we have. So not only have we got better welfare numbers, so less people taking welfare funding, but we also have more people in jobs. I mean, that changes the economic dial significantly, and yet he didn't know that. So today he's coming out announcing $135 million for 50 Medicare urgent care clinics based on GP surgeries and community health centres that will provide bulk billing. Well, newsflash, that might work in Melbourne and Sydney, Mr Albanese, but it certainly does not work in regional centres where workforce is actually our biggest issue. And unless he has a strategy for increasing health workforce in regional centres, then it is just another city-centric policy.
Well, you've got to wonder whether Mr Albanese's got his finger on the employment pulse on that other topic we've talked about regularly about the ag visa. He refused to make a commitment that he'd support it if he was in government at the National Farmers Federation Forum recently. I mean, where does that place the difference between the parties on that front?
Look, it's enormous. The ag visa has been long fought for, and it has been achieved. Vietnam has signed up. India has been encouraged and invited to participate as well. Workforce is the key issue, and yet his lack of understanding and his bowing to unions such as the AWU is absolutely outrageous.
Now, I want to track back to a couple of big announcements made on Friday. First of all, a commitment made by the coalition and the state level for a hospital at Mildura. $750 million they've committed. Were there any Nationals involved in that announcement, or is it a Liberal Party announcement?
Well, it would be very interesting to know that. I don't know the answer. It's a coalition state issue. And, we all understand why. One thing would be apparent that Labor have certainly not signed up, and we'll have a whole range of issues that pertain to health that are state responsibilities, which the Andrews Labor government has failed to answer and to respond to, such as the Swan Hill Hospital as well, for that matter. And so, look, I welcome the news that the Coalition would commit to $750 million for the hospital. We've got a lot of votes to move out of Melbourne, focusing on Greens and Labor in order to achieve that. We've got a lot of votes to shift from Labor Greens to the Coalition in order for the Coalition to actually get in. The vast swathe of seats in Melbourne and around Melbourne are Labor Greens, and they would have to change to the Coalition in order for that funding to be realised. So I think the key message here is that the Coalition is aware of and focused on regional communities in a way that Labor just is not.
Now, you mentioned Labor and the Greens. That was the other big announcement made on Friday about the 450 gigalitres under the Murray Darling Basin Plan to head into South Australia. I think I've got it right. You've mentioned in your social media commentary to beware a Labor Greens Independence alliance on the Murray Darling Basin. Is that your concern, and what do you mean by that?
Yes, it is my concern. That announcement by Labor is to shore up a city seat, Boothby, at least in Adelaide. And when what we know in terms of history and tracking with independents is that they align over 80% of the time with Labor and Greens. So if Labor is getting into power and they have a commitment to ensuring the 450 GL is taken out of the river and taken out of supply consumption for irrigators, that is a huge problem. I mean, we have 2 GL has been taken out at this point in time because the Coalition and the Nationals in particular have fought for a socio-economic neutrality test. When that test has been applied, and it was agreed to in a bipartisan way through the basin states, when that is applied, you can't take water out of the river and for more environmental purposes. It's just not possible because the community will suffer, and it's every community along the Murray Basin region that is the problem here. Labor are unaware of that, nor do they care. They want to shore up the seats in South Australia and in the city of Adelaide. It is hugely problematic. It's not a small thing. If Albo gets in, not only will we potentially not have an ag visa, we will also have 450 GL or another 448 GL taken out of the river, and no promises that they won't actually demand more.
Well, and on that front, you talk about the Labor Greens Independence Alliance. Is this a comment more so at the Senate and the likes of Nick Xenophon in South Australia, or at, say, the independent candidates in the seat of Mallee itself?
Well, I mean, it kind of highlights another issue that independents really just don't get the say. If you've got the major parties, because of how they vote, because of where they sit, they don't get to make the decisions. They can vote one way or another, and as I said, the history shows that they have, I think it's over 85% of the time they vote with Labor Greens, and it's Labor who will determine the policy. So, effectively a vote for an independent is a vote for Labor Greens. And that is the concern that we have in regional seats.
And one of the catalysts of that buyback policy that people are fearful about in the Murray-Darling Basin upstream in North New South Wales and Victoria was Nick Xenophon during a debate about the recovery from the GFC. What is the impact going to be of buybacks if they're reinstated in the seat of Mallee?
Well, it will mean that irrigation will be less available. It means that farmers will be called on to sell water. And while Penny Wong might say that, it's voluntary, the reality is that it shifts the market so that it increases prices for water and it risks the farming industry on which our region relies. If we don't have a healthy farming industry, then, we all suffer. Every community suffers.
Well, Anne Webster, thanks very much for your time. We're out of time, but appreciate your input on all of those important topics for your electorate. With May 21 election date, we'll be speaking regularly leading up to that.
Good on you. Thanks, Ricky.